Hello, everyone. We are welcome to the seventh class out of 16 classes for the data analytics course and introduction to SQL and Python. We've done a lot of theoretical understanding on data analytics. And in our last class, we installed SQL, a database management software platform. So today, we are going to go further by looking at the features of SQL, Microsoft SQL, and how we can use it um, to store our data and to also do some manipulation on our data. So we are going to go in now into the course. I'm going to share my slide. We're going to talk briefly about the features of SQL. And of course, we're going to start interacting with data as soon as we wrap up on our brief talk. So today's class is going to be interactive, practical, and I enjoy that if you have not installed SQL and Management Studio software on your laptop, I enjoy that you should watch the previous class, the demo installation, and try to follow to install the software because we're going to be using that software, the platform, in our next few classes to write SQL script. By time we're wrapping up in our 12th class, that's in 4 classes from now, you would have been you would have had good understanding of how to write SQL scripts, and you would have also been writing simple to medium complex SQL scripts to interact with your data. So let's go into our slide now. Right. Okay, so we're looking at Microsoft SQL Platform specifically for this course. We already know that we have other types of SQL platform like the Oracle SQL, the MySQL, and so on and so forth. But for this class, we're concentrating on Microsoft SQL, and we have already installed it. So these are the objectives we'll be looking at today. So we are going to open up our installed SQL platform, look at the various features, and we're also going to import data into our SQL database platform. Okay, so I'm going to go in now into, this is a practical class, so I'm going to open up my SQL platform now. Remember, there is the software, and then there is the Management Studio that helps you with the GUI interface to interact with your software. So to open up your Management Studio, you simply go to your stats. Okay, and then, oh, sorry, I need to share the whole of my screen so you can see everything. Okay, right, so we simply click on our Start button, and then we look for Microsoft SQL. So you can see that you have 2 folders installation. You have the Microsoft SQL Server 2019, which is the software itself. Then you also have the Microsoft SQL Server tools, right? Remember that when we were downloading, we downloaded the Management Studio on that tool. So Management Studio is a tool that integrates with SQL Server. So you are going to find Management Studio under Tools, right? So if you expand on that folder, you are going to find Management Studio here. There are other tools to used in SQL Server, but for this class, we're just looking at Management Studio alone. So you simply click on Management Studio. So once you open up Management Studio, it's going to open up, it's going to help you to load your SQL Server software as well on it. So this is a blank Management Studio, right? But for you to connect to your SQL Server, you need to provide your connection details. And that's what this box here is for. So you can just leave it at the default. You have your database engine, because your server, your SQL Server is actually a database engine. There are actually other types too that you can connect to. You can connect to an analysis server engine, reporting server engine, but for this class, we're looking just at database engine. Then server name, this is also usually a default name that was installed for you while the SQL Server installation was going on. So you can just leave it at this. But just for knowledge sake, you can have more than one SQL Server installation on your on a computer. So if you have more than one SQL Server installation and there are no conflicts, right, you can pick the one you want simply by clicking on the down arrow. Right, you can see I have 2 server installation, but I just want one, this one. So in your own case, you can leave it at the default. The default would usually be your computer name and then SQL Express. Then for authentication, you can have 2 types of authentication. You can have Windows authentication, which is usually the default. So I just say leave it at the default. But again, you can have other types of authentication. A most common type of authentication is your SQL Server authentication. So these are for other users that you have profiled on your SQL Server. Remember, we discussed that SQL Server can allow multiple users to access the database even at the same time. So those multiple users, you must have been created under the login details in the database server. So once they have their login name and password, they can log in from here. But the default is the Windows authentication. So you can leave it at that. And then once this box pops up for you, you just simply click connect. Right, so now that you have connected to SQL Server, you now have your SQL Server management, your SQL Server software, database management software. You now have it loaded on your SQL Server Management Studio. So there are 2 different things, but they work together, right? So I'm going to explain the features of SQL Management Studio and the features of the database server that we have loaded, that's SQL Server Management System that we have loaded. And then we are going to look at how to write scripts in SQL Server Management software, just like we did yesterday using the command prompt. So everything we did on the command prompt, we can as well do that on our Management Studio. So the Management Studio has these menus that you can see. Sorry, I'm not sure this. Let me see if I can expand. It's not any better. Okay. Right. So These menus are just basic menus, right? But on the menus, you'll notice that you have the same menu bar. The menu bar is not changing, right? So the menu bar here just contains some shortcuts to some functions you might want to perform in SQL Server. So your file menu can help you to come up with your Object Explorer with which you connect. So if I want to connect to more than one databases, I will just simply click on my Object Explorer, right? I've already connected to one. I want to connect to the second one. So I'll come and click the other server I want to connect to, right? And just click connect. And you can also open two instances of the same server. Let's pick the same one and open a second. Okay. The other instance is no longer existing. I've removed it from my system. Okay, so this helps you to connect to your SQL data management system. You can also disconnect from there, right? You can see that once I click disconnect, my database management system is gone, and I am back to my blank management studio, right? So to connect again, you simply go to File and then click Connect Object Explorer, right? And click Connect, right? So we have our database management system loaded again. So that's what the Object Explorer is used for. It's used to connect from your management studio into your database management software. Then you have the new, which helps you to call up a new file or a new project. You have open for opening existing files and the rest of that. These are just basic menus that you would have been familiar with from other Microsoft softwares. I'm not going to go into the details of these other ones, right? So we're just going to look at some other menu options here, right? So I'm particular about this new query. So for you to write SQL statements, you have to create a query file. So your SQL statements must be written in Management Studio in a query file. And SQL statements is what you use to interact with your data. So for us to write any statement, we just click on New Query, and it will load a query file for us. So this query file, you can as well save them because it's a file. You can save it. You can save the list of your scripts as a query file. So you save it, you give it a name, and you can access it from your file explorer. So let's just assume to save this. So you can click on save here, or you click on save as from your file menu. I can call it any name. Say I call it SQL Query 1, and I can save it on my desktop or wherever I choose to save my SQL statement. You also have this box here, which shows you the available databases that your management studio can, the available databases in your SQL server, right? So we have connected to SQL Server here. So to view the databases there, right, you can view it by clicking this down arrow. So you currently have these 4 databases, right, under your SQL Server. This option will not come up until you have a query file open, because whenever you are writing a script in a query file, you must be writing it against data in a particular database. So if I'm writing the script here, I should indicate from which database that I'm writing that script against. So this is an example of a script. If I'm trying to get information from, let's assume, let's look for one of the tables here. Don't worry, I'm going to explain this to you later. Okay, so this is an example of an SQL script. And this table is actually from master's database, right? So if I try to execute this script now, you can see that I'm not in master's database, I'm in temp DB. If I try to execute it, it would likely come up with an error. You can see it says invalid object name because this information does not exist in this database. So I have to come back here and refer to the actual database. If I run this query now against the actual database where the object resides, it would come back with my result, right? So the essence of this list is to ensure that you are in the right database at every point in time. So you can also indicate specifically the database for which your query should be connected to by using this use database option. So even if I'm not in the right database, once I've specified use database and then specify the database name and execute the query, then I will have the correct information as well. So this is an example of how to run your scripts against a given database. Now, you'll notice that when I wanted to execute this script, after typing it, I came here to click execute, right? So whatever script you are trying to run on database management software, after writing it, you need to click on execute. In our previous class, we wrote some scripts on command prompt. And after writing the script, we typed the go command, go. Yeah, so your execute is just like your go command to say, okay, this script or this line of text should be interpreted and the results should be given, right? So that's the essence of execute. So shortcut to execute is F5. So you can also highlight and just press F5 on your keyboard, right? So that's how to use execute. So just concentrate on the basic menus. You have the save. I've talked about new query, execute. I've talked about object explorer, using the connection. This is the shortcut to your object explorer here. So you must always be connected to your database management software for you to execute any query, right? So these are very important things to know. You can see your execution plan for queries using this button, some query options, and some other interesting menus as well that are available within your management studio. So let's go on now to the database management software itself. So the database management software, like we said, houses databases. So I can have multiple databases within my management software platform. As you can see here, we already have 4 databases. These are system databases, meaning that they are default databases that are installed while the software is installed on your system. The tables in it should not be, you should avoid, messing up with the tables in your system databases, because they are also used for internal execution of some of your scripts. So whenever you want to work on your database management software, it's advised that you create your own database. And to create your database is simple. You can do it either in 2 ways, either by using the click options or by writing the script for it. I'm going to show you both options. I'm going to start with the click options. So if you are creating a database, you have to come to the Object Explorer and simply highlight on the database first, then right click. So once you right click, you say new, you click on new database, right? The same way, so if you want to create a new table for your database, you simply open up the database, look for the table folder, then right click on it and click on new table, right? So now we are going to create new database for our SQL management database system. And to do that, we are going to right click, new database, then we'll give it a name. So I want to call my database a test DB. Okay, so you will notice that I have space in my database name. It's not best practice for you to have your database name space. It's best that there's no space. You can use hyphen, you can use underscore, right, to complete your database and as an alternative to the space. So I'm going to create it using, I'm going to replace the space using underscore, like you can see on my screen. So test underscore database. Now, there are some few things you also need to know about your database creation. So when you are creating a database, it creates 2 files, 2 physical files for you. The first physical file is just the same database name. This is usually the file that contains the data that you put into your database. It's a data file, and you can see that the file type contains rows of data. So any data information you put into your database comes into your database file. Then there's another file that's an additional file that it creates. It's called a log file, right? This log file is a text-based file that simply writes every action that the software does within it. And the log file is very, very useful. Like if there are errors or if there are changes that you can't explain within your database, you can check within the log file to know the steps that to know what happened and the steps that took place before that event occurred. So this log file is used a lot by database administrators to be able to administer databases and to also troubleshoot on databases. Troubleshooting simply means checking where there are faults or where there are bugs or where there are errors within their databases, right? So these 2 files are very important. You can see the file type. You can also see the file group. Then this initial size. As you continue to create or input more data into your database, your file size continue to increase, right? And then another thing I want you to know is the path. This path indicated here. So this path simply shows you where the physical data is being stored on your system. For you to see the file location, you just click on this small button beside the file path. So if I click on it, it will open it up for me. Something similar to Windows Explorer within SQL Management Studio. So this is like a Windows Explorer. You can see this is your C drive with all the folders in it and all that. So it's showing you that your path is stored in this place. If I want to change it, I can click on this, right? And then I can change my path into another folder of my choice, right? But for now, let's leave it at the same default location, right? So once you have given your database name and you have checked that all this information here are correct, all you just need to do is to click on OK. Okay, I have an error here. Let me see why. Okay, let's create that again. New database, test database. I think I have a similar database name there. So let me call it DB. So I just do OK. Okay, so it's as simple as that. You can see that your database is created, right? So in your database, you can create tables. Your database houses tables. Your tables are like your sheets in your Excel containing rows and columns. And remember, I said that tables define information about a subject, right? A popular example is creating a table for student list, right? So you are collecting information about students. Okay, so to create a table, you just simply right-click on Tables folder, click on New, and then say Table. Right, so I'm going to explain this to us later. I don't want us to put in the definition for the table yet. We are going to perform an exercise on this, our database. I sent us an Excel file in our previous class, the regional sales data file. So our first exercise is to import the data from that Excel file into this table. If you don't have that Excel file, you can use any Excel file of your choice. But if you need data sets of Excel file, you can simply go to www.data.world, just register, and they have different cleaned data sets in Excel sheets that you can use for various practice and exercises. So I'm just going to open up that Excel file and show us what it looks like quickly before we. Oh, okay. It's loaded now. Okay, yeah, so you can see my Excel file on screen. So in Excel file, you have sheets, right, that hold specific information, like this this sales data information is showing us sales orders that were made by various customers. So all the sales order information is in a sheet. So this is like a table, and we want to bring in all this data from Excel into our database management system. Then you have the list of customers as well, right? You have store locations, you have products, you have regions, you have sales team. So you you don't need to do data entry of all this data into your database management system. SQL database already has a tool which enables you to just transfer the data from Excel. So the essence of this is because when you are faced with a work to do, you might have various Excel data from some clients, and you might as well have data in your database management system. You need to find a way of merging all together into a data warehouse, that's into a central location, right? So you must understand how to connect and collect data from these various platforms. So a very popular platform wherein you find maybe ad hoc data or even sometimes real data is Excel. So we're just going to practice now how to import Excel data into management server. Okay, so I've showed you this. I'm going to close this now, and we will then import it into our SQL server. So to import it, you simply click on Start, and then you look for Microsoft SQL Server. So you are going to find the import export under Microsoft SQL Server software. So for some installation, you might find two import export. One is 32 bits, the other one is 64 bits. So you just choose the one that is right for your system. But I'm sure most systems now come in 64 bits. So we'll click on 64 bits, and then you just follow the instructions and the prompt like you can see on my screen. So we'll do a next. Right, so look at the instruction. It says choose a data source. So your data source is where your data is coming from. Destination is where the data is going to. So in this case, our data source is Excel. So we're going to click here and look for Excel. This is Microsoft Excel. So pick your data source. Once you pick your data source, it's going to ask you for the location of the file. So I'm just going to click and pick my file. Okay, so as you can see in my file, the first rows, right, are my column names, right? So I'm going to leave this checkbox checked the way it is, saying that first rows as column names, right? And then my Excel version is actually 2010, so this is fine. But if your Excel version is the earlier one, you can change the version from here. So this is 2010, this is fine. Then click next. Okay, so choose a choose a destination. Your destination is where your data is going to. And in this case, our destination is SQL Server, right? So because SQL Server has already been installed on your laptop, of course, this will detect the destination. And you can have several other destinations as well. You can transport using this tool data from Excel to Access, data from Excel to another Excel, data from Excel or from, it's both ways. So even data, you can export data from Microsoft Server to Excel using this tool, or either ways you want it. So in this case, our destination is SQL Server, and the right option to pick is native client, not the one with RDA, SQL Server native client. So you're just going to pick this, and then it will ask you for your connection details to your SQL Server. Remember, the same connection details you used on Management Studio is what you would use here. So in this case, I'll just leave it at using Windows authentication. This Windows authentication is just like using the authentication for the user who is logged on. So the user if the user who is logged on is an administrative user and is the same user who installed the software, then Windows authentication would work. If not, you might need authentication that has been created and given the role or privilege to be able to access the SQL Server, which would need username and password. But in this case, we don't need a username and password. Okay.
Hello, sorry, okay. Hello.
Yes. Hello.
Sorry to take you back, but I didn't get the difference between the use Windows authentication and the use SQL Server authentication, please.
Okay. Okay. So you're welcome. So the Windows authentication is for users that have administrative access on their laptop. So that's, for instance, if the laptop is your own and you are able to access any part in your laptop, then you likely be the one with the administrative access. So administrative access, you can have a, how do I explain that to you? Administrative access is someone who has
for instance, my own personal laptop
yes,
belongs to me.
Your own personal laptop, but if
a computer,
company
okay,
laptop, you might not have administrative access. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So and that's what we used to log on our Management Studio as well. So we can just use that as well to log on here. But
if I don't have that administrative access, I can now use this SQL Server authentication. Is it going to? Okay.
Yeah, and you must have the username and password must have been created on SQL Server for you to use this SQL Server authentication. As we go on, I'm going to show you how to create a username and password on SQL Server.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so once you have your connection details right, you have to pick the database the tables are going into. Remember, Excel has sheets as tables, right? So when it's taking the data information, it's going to take each of these sheets as tables. So the tables are not going to go into SQL Server lying fallow. They have to be connected to a database, right? So I have to pick the database I want those tables to go into. Remember, I created my own database. So I'm just going to pick my own database, which is the test DB, right? And then click next. So you have two options here: copy data from one or more tables of view, which is the default, and that's what we're going to use. You have a second option, which says write a query to specify the data to transfer. So you can also write SQL scripts within this tool. Let's say you don't want to transport all the data, you just want a filtered part of the data or some part of the data. You can come here to write SQL script to transfer the data. So if I pick this option and I click next, it will open up a query file for me to write SQL scripts. So so I can write an SQL script here against a table and it will execute. But that's not what we want for now. We want to copy all the data. So you just click on the first option, copy all the data, save next, right? So it shows you the sheets as tables, right? So this is your source, and then this is your destination. So when I click on the sheets I want to copy, it would create a default table name for me in my destination. I can change my table name from here to say, okay, create this table as customers table, create this one as a products table. I can also go and change the name from my database. So I'm going to change, I'll just change this to, I'll leave the rest, I'll change it from my database. So I'll just click on next and next and finish. So you can see that all your data have been copied or is getting copied from your Excel sheet into your database. So once we're done with this operation, we'll go back to our database and check for the data there. So this is successful. We can close this. We'll go back to our database now. I have several windows. I need to close one. Okay, so
Sorry, Akwe.
yes.
Sorry, can I just ask a question, please?
Yes, please go.
Yeah. So just to I'm not trying to take us back to our first class, but I just want to double clarify something, that what we've been doing. So if I get all of this correctly, yeah, data analytics is mostly about pulling out data, right? Like exporting and pulling out data.
Yeah, that's part of the process. Remember that process that we described. You have to collect your data, store your data. Yes, and you also need to perform an extraction of your data into the data warehouse where you will
data bank.
Yes, where you can perform the analytics.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you. I just wanted to be sure that I was on track.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, right. So Now that we've pulled data from Excel, and I think I mentioned to us the essence of having this knowledge, your data can come in various platforms. People can have, your clients might have data in Excel, they might have data in Access, they might have data in database management system as well. But for you to work on the data, all of the data needs to be pulled into one source, transformed, cleaned, and ready for analytics, right? And that's the process of ETL, which is extract, transform, and load. This is very, very small data, of course, compared to the kind of big data that you'll be working with. And in most cases, for you to work with relatively large data, Excel would be slow, Excel would not be as efficient, and you would need to use a database management system, right? So a common and useful database management system is Microsoft SQL, which we're learning now. Microsoft SQL is even popularly used across many organizations for as well keeping their data. Almost every banks use either Microsoft or Oracle SQL for storing customers' information, be it their transaction, be it their details and all that. So the knowledge of SQL is actually very important.
Oh yeah, because it's actually these days now, it's actually like in terms of my area of work and everything, you know, and when you look at most job requirements now that have to do with tech, this is usually because this SQL is usually a requirement, a required skill. Yeah, there.
Okay, so let's continue now. So we have our database. We will just check now and we'll see that our data has been imputed into our database. So you remember that I didn't create any table. This table was blank before, but now you can see all the tables from your sheet created into this database, right? So for you to access the data, just like you would have been accessing it on Excel, simply right click on the table, the exact table you want to go to, and you can do, let's say, edit. So if I do edit, I can change the data information here. Okay, so this customer, first customer is Avon Corp. I can change the information to other names and so on and so forth. So,
hello. Okay.
Yes.
Hello. Good
Hello.
evening. Sorry. I don't know. I'm still having the same challenge I had yesterday, but I just went to my program and discovered that there's a Microsoft SQL Server 2014 Excel local database. I don't know whether that is what is causing my problem.
It might be. I'm going to assist you after the class.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, sorry,
Should I uninstall this? Should I uninstall it and be installing this other one while we are doing?
Yes, you can do that. Okay, so
hello.
For this,
sorry, I'm so sorry, okay. Just one more thing, please. Sorry, I joined the class in late, so I don't know if there was a link that you sent for us to click or download something.
Okay, yes, there is.
So I just heard overheard if anyone mentioned something now. So I joined in about 20 minutes late.
Okay, I'll share this.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we can see our data being pushed from Excel into the database, right? So here you can access the data. You can also impute new data. So I can, okay. I have just 50 customer names, right? So I can come here and impute new data from here, and do 51 and then impute new data. Okay, so just the same way you interact with data on Excel, you can do same here. I can change my table name. Just do right click and do rename. I can change my table name into whatever I would want it to be. I can also change my field names. So let's say I don't want this to be customer ID as my column name. I want it to be serial number. I can change it to serial number. Right. So once I change that, I need to save. Once I save, I'll need to refresh or open and close again. So you can see my column name has changed. Right. So these are various things you can do, and more things. All of these things that we have done, we can do them writing the scripts, and we can do much more writing SQL scripts. So I'm going to stop this class now. This is the end of class 7, and then we are going to go into much more practical in our next class. Thank you for listening. See you in the next class. Bye for now.